Well, it's Neighbourhood Centre Week this week, and the theme is local community resilience. I mean, hearing from Jake this morning talking about Maryborough and Gympie as well as they, navigated that rising floodwater over the weekend. That community resilience thing really does sort of hit home. And during this week, the Queensland Council of Social Services and neighbourhood centres in Queensland are jointly calling for an urgent increase in funding for their centres. The rising cost of living and the pressure that people are feeling, there's a concern that there could be funding cuts on the table. And as those services are in greater demand, they're in a bit of a rock and a hard place. Corrie McColl is the coordinator of the Bundaberg Neighbourhood Centre. Good morning, Corrie.
Good morning.
Now, Corrie, if I've never been to a neighbourhood centre before, how would you describe your service?
Okay, so we're a community-focused organisation looking to help people in the community for a range of support needs. In short, we're primarily funded to offer connection services for people in Bundaberg and surrounding areas to connect them for support services that they so very much need. Very often we get phone calls around, accessing childcare, aged care, health services, all sorts of things like that. And what we do is we work hard to make sure people know what their options are once they've contacted us in the first instance.
I imagine if you find yourself in need of support, sometimes it's unexpected, sometimes it's been pressure that's built up over time. That idea of having the clarity of mind to then find the support for you, that must be just feel so out of reach for people.
Look, very much so. I mean, we take for granted how hard it can be to actually get somebody to help you in times of need. We are in contact for around 10,000 people a year, whether it's on the phone, email, Facebook or walk-in. Many of those people come in our front door because they don't have a lot of options left. They're looking for homes, they're looking for funding to be able to eat tonight, they're looking for support services because of domestic family violence, and the list goes on, and in fact has increased quite a lot over the last few years.
Well, yes, as you've seen that demand increase and pressure of things like the pandemic pushing a lot of people right to the edge, what's your concern about funding and potential budget cuts?
Okay, so where we're at in many years leading up to now, we've come from a funding regime from the Department of Communities, Housing and Digital Economy, which has been just enough to keep the doors open and fund part wages. It doesn't help to fund extra activities and for additional positions within the centre. We do get around $123,000 a year to run the centre. We actually costs us around $256,000 a year to keep the doors open and do everything that we need to do. So the shortfall is already there, and we're meeting those shortfall through fundraising, room hire, all sorts of other activities that we can do to get enough money to be able to fund our positions that we do have in place and to be able to keep community programs running.
I imagine, though, that must be getting harder and harder to do as well.
It is. Look, finding funding through different funding bodies is always difficult anyway, and unless you're very good at writing tenders and you have a demonstrated need that you can roll out through a tendering process, it's very difficult to get those successful tenders, and we rely on them to try and do the things that we need to do. However, moving forward, we will not be able to continue to run some of the community-based programs that we would like to do because we just don't have the funding to be able to do that.
And what does that mean for our community if those services and a centre like yours isn't able to keep up with this rising demand?
Well, I suppose the question is if a centrally located community hub isn't able to provide all of the services that people expect a community hub in Bundaberg to be able to do, where do they go? We're lucky in that we have a community focus. We have 7 paid staff. We have 23 active volunteers. We have 33 in total that are engaged with the centre. But you can't do any more if you don't have the money to be able to cater, to be able to turn the lights on, to run the air conditioning and all the things that have to do from an operational perspective. Yet everything's getting dearer. We've come from a population base 20 to 25 years ago of probably 69,000 people in Bundaberg, and we've grown to probably over 95,000 now in the region. But the funding has not increased proportionally at all. So, we've really not grown with the needs of the community.
So this week is Neighbourhood Centre Week, and the Queensland Council of Social Services is teaming up with neighbourhood centres to raise awareness around this issue. What can people do to support the centre?
Look, funny enough, we're in voting week last week, and vote for the people that you think can help your community. At the end of the day, yes, we run a community centre in Targo Street, but we're here for the community members. That's why we exist. If the community feel that we should be able to do more with extra funding, then they need to vote with their feet. They need to vote for the people that they think are going to be able to move us forward and help us survive into the future and grow with the community. We're taking on more and more people from down south in the retirement field. We've got more and more people on the coastal strips of Innes Park, Elliot Heads, Bargara, Burnett Heads. Bundaberg itself has grown a lot in the last 10 years, even by the council inclusion stuff, so with Childers and Gingin, and yet, we haven't moved forward to fund the services that are required. Without us, people don't know where to turn to in times of need. They simply start asking someone else. They start calling services ad hoc to try and find out where to go. As a one-stop centre for the Bundaberg community, we are the first point of contact lifeline for people that really don't know where to turn next.
And I imagine that having that one place to go helps alleviate the pressure and the stress of trying to find that solution for your situation.
Yeah, exactly. Without us being able to shed some light on people's issues, they basically end up in self-harm. They can end up doing damage to others. They can end up in depression. All sorts of things happen when you don't know where to turn. It's not a good situation. We're lucky to have a community centre based in Bundaberg, and what we need to do is utilise it to its full potential and resource it appropriately so it can do as much as possible in this time of need.
And there might be people who have heard you this morning who want to help out at the centre, think that this is the kind of organisation where they'd like to spend their time and help some people. We're actually going to, in a moment, hear from Volunteering Queensland about why people should be thinking about volunteering. But if people wanted to lend their support with hours instead of dollars, can they do that?
Yes, certainly. While we do have some limited capacity and space at the centre itself because of the building constraints, we welcome anybody that wants to look at volunteering in the community. There are different ways of volunteering. It doesn't mean that you're sitting in an office in a chair and you're a physical person in a building. Volunteering can take many forms. It can be helping people to get their driving hours. It can be a virtual means by mentoring over the phone. It can be connecting with people at the shopping centre. It can be all sorts of different types of volunteering, and that's what we need to do now, is get people to think out of the box. If they're sitting at home thinking, well, I don't need to work, or I don't want to, or I would like to do something to give back to the community, certainly come to us. We have a partnership with Volunteering Queensland at the moment where we have a Volunteer Connect coordinator at the centre. It's simply a matter of ringing the centre and making an appointment to talk to our Volunteer Connect worker and see how we can get them on board and align them with a volunteering organisation.
Well, Corrie, thank you very much for giving us some insight into the neighbourhood centre in Bundaberg, and I'm sure that the neighbourhood centres across the Wide Bay and Burnett are doing similar important work. Very much appreciate your time on ABC Wide Bay today.
Thank you.
Corrie McColl is the coordinator of the Bundaberg Neighbourhood Centre, which is in Targo Street in Bundaberg. And as he says there, they are a one-stop shop. So if you ever find yourself in need or you have a little bit to give, you can get in touch with your local neighbourhood centre.